lemons, making lemonade out of lemons, with Art Courtenay. So welcome, Art. It's really good to have you here. When God called Jeremiah, he said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." Well, Art was born into a family of unbelievers. But like Jeremiah, God had a plan for Art's life. And tonight we're going to talk to Art about the way that God has worked in his life through some of the good circumstances and a lot of painful ones to bring him to the place where he is now. We're going to see how God was with Art every step of the way, from childhood through his youth to where now he is coordinating a worldwide video ministry. So we're really excited to hear your story tonight, Art. So I've got a couple of little quick Bible readings to do. The first one comes from Jeremiah 1 verse 5, which I just mentioned. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart and appointed you as a prophet to the nations." And the second one is from Romans 8 verse 28, which says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." And I think, Art, maybe that sort of describes where you're coming from today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first thing needs to be said is that verse obviously doesn't just apply to a certain individual or certain individuals. It applies to all of us. And I think, sometimes we forget that. That, when we're reading in the scriptures, particularly about Jeremiah that you mentioned there, that's relevant to each and every single one of us. We all have a role to play. God hasn't just selected one or two people to do one or two things. He selected us all. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think the more we meditate and reflect upon it, the more it can motivate us as well to get on and do. And to encourage one another, and always just putting God to the forefront of our lives. Really, I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your early life, because you've got your life story sort of starts right at the beginning. Obviously, most of us do. So start at the beginning of your life. Just tell us a little bit about your early life, your family, your parents, your childhood. What was it like growing up in your place?
Well, to start off with, I was born, like the rest of us.
Oh, it's a great start.
But yeah, I was born into a family, basically a dysfunctional family. My dad left home when I was 3, so my mum was left to bring me up on her own. But there'd always been a connection with Christadelphians, bizarrely. When I look back on it now, obviously at the time you don't really appreciate it. But my grandma had come over from Germany during the war to escape what was going on over there. She married my granddad. They had 3 children. My mum was one of 3. She got 2 brothers. And just to get them out of the house on a Sunday, they were sent to their local church, which just happened to be a Christadelphian ecclesia just down the road from them in Coventry. As a result of that,
so this was your mother's family, was it? Your mother was sent there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where the connection originally started with Christadelphians in the family. My mum's brother, Brother Peter Stonnell, he eventually did get baptised. He retained his interest and moved to Canada. So they live over in Canada now. The other brother didn't, and my mum didn't either. But after my mum got married and then subsequently divorced, having had me, she ended up working for a Christadelphian as a hairdresser at another Coventry ecclesia. So again, that connection suddenly resurfaced. Nothing happened from that. We eventually moved, my mother and I, to a road, again, adjacent to another Christadelphian ecclesia in Coventry, the Grosvenor Road Ecclesia. And as she got sent to Sunday school, she sent me to Sunday school to get me out of the house and get me out of her hair on a Sunday morning. I
Family
can't
tradition.
remember, that's right. I can't remember much of that time at all, but she got remarried, and then we moved out of the area completely towards Leicestershire, and there was a preaching effort going on at one of the local ecclesias to where we were, and somebody that she had known from sending me to Sunday school happened to knock on the door. They'd been invited to come and help with the local preaching effort, and they got talking, and she went. She started to go to the local ecclesia in Nuneaton. She went. She was eventually baptised. My stepdad eventually got baptised as well.
Wow.
And then the Christadelphians were sold to me, in the sense that, they have a youth group, a CYC they call it. You'd be most welcome to go. Give you something to do. It's on a Wednesday night, and you'd be the only boy of about 16 girls. So I started to go.
Sounds brilliant.
I started to go, and really enjoyed it. I found it. I wasn't put off, not having any religion in my life at all. I think sometimes it can be easy to be put off walking into a Christadelphian hall, but I was made so welcome. Obviously, being a CYC, it was a more relaxed environment. It was fun. It was games, and then there was a bit of scripture. And I actually wanted the scripture. There was other children, we were children at that point. There were other teenagers there. That they were more interested in the social interaction with each other. But I was completely isolated because I didn't know any of them. They were all from Nuneaton, I was from Hinckley, and I just turned up kind of thing. But yeah, they used to take me home. The leaders used to take me home, and we used to have some really, really long chats about some of the discussion that we'd had. And what I really liked about it was they always had this scripture right at the end. I don't know if all CYCs do that. But it left you thinking, you'd had fun, you'd had games, you'd had interaction, social interaction, then you did some scripture, and it just resonated with you. It just stayed with you. And we had plenty of times where they'd drive me home, and we'd be sitting outside my house. Sometimes it seemed like a couple of hours just chatting about things that they'd been talking about.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's my early experiences with Christadelphians. And how that connection really stayed there. There's a lot more going on with school and all that kind of stuff, but
okay.
Really...
Well, tell us a little bit about school then. How did you find school? Did you have friends? And
again, that's interesting because once we'd moved out of the area of Coventry, I had to start a new school. So I was, a completely freshman, if you like. I was new to everything. Really difficult to make friends. I was quite feisty, so I ended up getting into a lot of fights and things like that at first. And then one day, this lad turned up that had also just joined. I think it was about two months after me, and he was put with me because we were both new, and we just hit it off. We got on like a house on fire, and then all through school, we were like best mates. He lived just around the corner from me. His mum and dad had bought a pub. So that was fascinating for me. We were always up there in the cellars and in the attics and all that kind of stuff. It was a really good time. Built up a really good friendship with him, and went all through school. Didn't really have many other friends at school. It was just that one lad. We moved, when I was about 13, 14, something like that. We moved out of the area again into Hinckley, about 7 miles away. But I kept having to go to the same school, because they didn't want to disrupt my education. And it just so happened, again, a couple of months after we moved, his mum and dad decided to move as well, and they moved right near us in another pub, 7 miles away. So we ended up biking to school together. So that friendship just continued and basically got stronger.
Oh, neat.
And then there was times, so when I think about religion, there was times when we used to bike home, because it was quite a trek, good 7 miles, something like that. And we'd stop off halfway on this park bench, and we'd just be looking at the sky, the night sky, because in the middle of winter it gets dark about 3-4 o'clock. And we used to talk about, where we are, who we are, why do we think we're here, do we think there's a God, and all those kind of things. And I think that was my first real interest in things outside myself. Because I think growing up in the 70s and early 80s, it was very much the start of the me generation. Everybody was encouraged to, be your own person and all this kind of stuff. But I remember those days vividly, those bikes home and thinking about the greater scheme. And I think for quite an early age, I think, not many people do that. And it was really important to me. It really focused my mind on something outside of myself.
So you were really searching, weren't you?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. There was always questions. And I was always wondering, well, we can't just be here. Sometimes we still do that. We look into the night sky and we think, wow, it's just awesome. There has to be a God. And anybody can have those thoughts. Anybody, you don't have to be of a certain age. You just have to be inquisitive and want to know the answers. And I think that's where it all started for me. And so when obviously the Christadelphian connection with CYC came along, I was asking questions, and I went to the odd gospel address on a Sunday, and there was one in particular that I heard that was all about Zechariah 14, Ezekiel 38, and I was just blown away. This book could be telling you what's going to happen in the future. It's like a sci-fi film, but in reality,
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. But in reality, and it was absolutely fascinating for me. So I was just hooked. I was absolutely hooked. I wasn't too bothered about personal salvation and all the other aspects of the Christian life, if you like. I was completely fascinated by prophecy,
Right.
and then all that other stuff came. It built into the equation, if you like, and it just grew and grew and grew. It was absolutely wonderful.
So at what point did you decide that was the direction you wanted your life to take?
Do you know what? I think it probably was that talk, because I'd never heard about Israel before. I'd heard about religion and Catholics and the Church of England and all that, but I'd never heard about Israel. And this whole talk was just about Israel. And it just made perfect sense. If there is a God and he declared himself to be the God of Israel, surely Israel are going to be important in his equations and his dealings with mankind. And it just made perfect sense. I'm not a super intelligent guy. I left school with relatively minor qualifications, but it just made sense.
Made sense, yeah.
Right.
You don't have to be an intellectual to believe in the truth or to believe in the Bible and work it out for yourself. On a very basic level, anybody can do that. And the thought of having these bishops and deacons that have to teach you and you have to follow what they say, that struck me as wrong. And so hearing this talk on I wish I could remember who the speaker was. He was a powerful speaker. Nuneaton did get good speakers, but the way he opened up the scriptures that particular evening, it just really resonated with me. And I think then I thought, yeah, this is serious. This could go somewhere. It's answering every question that I had. And then, with the mention of Israel as well, it just brought up more questions. I was just like a sponge.
Right.
Soaked it all up.
So what else was going on at that time? Were you must have been about the stage of leaving school at that stage, starting a job.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't get any qualifications at school really, just the basic GCSEs. They were then. I got 8 or 9 of them, but no fantastic grades. So I knew it was going to be a hands-on job for me. So I just wrote to all the local shops down our local town. One of them took me in. It happened to be a butchery shop. And that's when I first realised what work ethic was. Up until that point, you're just a child. You're enjoying the hot summers that we had in the 80s and just enjoying life. And then suddenly you're thrust into this environment where you either work or you don't. You either work hard or you get the sack. because there was other people wanting to take your job. So I quickly realised then I got quite a good work ethic. I worked hard for 3 years with them. I became a qualified butcher, but I didn't like it. Part of my training, I had to go to an abattoir, and I didn't like that at all. It really put me off. But the other thing that really affected me at that time was the friend that I grew up with through school. His mum and dad decided to emigrate as soon as he got his qualification. So as soon as 16 came and he got his exam results, they emigrated to South Africa, and I never actually saw him again. I found out not long afterwards, when he was 18, he died in a car crash, which really affected me at the time, because I was smack bang in the middle of the 80s, and the 80s over here, I don't know what it was like in New Zealand, but it was pretty manic, and there was all sorts of things. There was gay movements going on, there was all kinds of things, and I was sucked into that. This was before I started going to CYC, really. And I was sucked into that, so I was definitely going the wrong way in life, in terms of what God wants from us. I ended up losing my job as a butcher. I had some cleaning jobs and things like that, and then I ended up getting a job in a nightclub, believe it or not. And I worked there for probably 2 or 3 years, I think. Again, not the best environment for me, but I look back and I think, would I have done that differently? I don't think I would have, because it's all led to where I am now in my mindset. In the nightclub, there was a whole new world opening up. You can imagine the sort of things that go on, the DJs, what they were like, the owner, what he was like, just the whole it's a breeding ground of debauchery, and it's just awful.
Immorality,
Immorality, but it just wasn't at the time for me. And I needed a bit of a shake-up, and I think having that lad, my friend, taken away from me like that, refocused my mind on
were you going to CYC at the same time as you were going to the working at the nightclub as well?
It was towards the end of my period of a nightclub, I started going to CYC a lot more, and then that kind of died off. During that period, I also met my future wife as well. I met her in the nightclub, actually.
Okay.
And so we both were, come from the outside. But it was interesting with her, because she'd been sent to Sunday school, but she was sent to a Methodist. And I'd started going CYC, and we were dating, and then on a Sunday I'd be leaving her, around about 5:30, because I've got to go somewhere. And of course, the way we were in the 80s, it was like, well, who are you going to see? Leaving me at 5:30, where are you going? What are you doing? So I plucked up the courage, and I told her that I was going to a Christadelphian ecclesia, a church, if you like. And she just turned around and said, "Can I come?" And it was like, oh, and that was a big turning point for me as well, because I think you can always be afraid of, certainly when you're discovering something like the truth, you can be afraid of revealing it to other people. But she was so supportive and so keen to learn as well, that it wasn't me on my own anymore. And that loss of my friend had been replaced with her. So she'd been put there, I believe, for that specific reason. And, we'd never looked back. We started to go together. And that was it. It never ended. I ended up leaving the nightclub. I got a proper job again.
Proper job.
It just went from better to better to better. Although it was still in the meat trade, I managed to work my way up over the years and eventually get out of the meat trade, which is what I really wanted to do. but yeah, it was lovely. We got baptised at Nuneaton when we were about 20 something. I can't remember exactly now. 1987.
Right.
1985. So right in the middle of the 80s.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So at what point did you started getting some health issues? Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on there?
Yeah, I was working for a company called Aldi over here that paid very, very well. So by this time I'd got out of the meat trade and I was working for a supermarket as a manager, which for me was, a big step because having left school with no qualifications or anything, to end up being a manager of a supermarket was a big step for me personally.
Yeah, that just shows the work that you had, though.
Yeah,
Devoted to what you're doing.
yeah, and I think a lot of it was to do with my work ethic. My employers could see that I was prepared to do the extra mile all the time, go that extra step, which at the same time as getting me where it got me in my work environment, it also was a disadvantage as well, as we'll come to in a minute, I suppose. So I was working there, and I as part of my salary, they gave me a really good health package because a lot of their managers were being burnt out within 1 or 2 years. But I was walking uptown once with my wife Tracy, and I just collapsed. No idea why. I just had this massive pain in my hip, and she carried on walking up, thinking I was still walking with her next to her. And there were other people coming to me and trying to pick me up and everything. I couldn't move. It was awful. It was horrible pain. And it turned out, after further investigations with MRI scans and CT scans and things like that, that the ball and socket in my hip hadn't formed properly when I was in the womb. But for some reason, it hadn't manifested itself until I was about 30 odd, 35, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been really active. I was into a lot of sports, any sport I would do. Jack of all trade, master of none, but I loved playing sport and all that kind of stuff. And I was big into dancing as well. So I did a lot of dancing. Hence why I was working in a nightclub, because I used to have to dance in a nightclub.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where my current employer at that time decided to put me in a warehouse out of public view. So I was managing a thing over there, a warehouse over there, and the top owners of the company came over from Germany, and they saw me walking around this warehouse with a stick, and they didn't like that at all. And then I'd had a couple of really bad falls at work. I fell down some concrete steps as a result of my hip giving way, and then as a forklift truck was coming toward me, I fell down. Unfortunately, the driver had enough sense to manage to steer the vehicle away, but it was 2 close calls really. And yeah, my doctor at that point, signed me off because he felt it was too risky. And fortunately, the health policy that Aldi had given me was still there, and I was looked after financially because of that. I basically retired around about 35 then, because I just, the hip was so bad. I was just falling over all the time, and it was causing me so much pain. There's a couple of times when I'd been paralyzed as well.
Wow.
I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't get up. And of course, if you're at work, you don't want to have to deal with that.
No.
So yeah, and that's basically, it was there all the time. It just didn't manifest itself until it was. I like to see it as that God it was there, because when we think about Jeremiah, God formed us in the womb. He knew all about us, and that was something that was put there, I believe, because it was going to be useful later on in my life. And I think it did prove useful. At the time, though, when you're in pain, you don't think like that.
No. So you've come through. You've finally made it through your childhood, your teenage years. You've made it through your butcher's apprenticeship. You've worked your way up. You're now a manager. and you've got this incredible hip problem. So how is God working there? You know, all of a sudden it's all taken away from you.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, at the time, it's really difficult to try and focus on the positive, you know, and I think reading the book of Job is really helpful when you're going through times like that. But it put me in a situation where I got this work ethic. I wanted to work hard. I was unemployable. I was financially stable. So what do I do? And, you know, I tried a couple of things. I tried eBay, you know, things like that, because that's, you know, I wanted to do something as best as I could.
Yeah.
But
and
then
seemed to me the sort of person that can't sit still.
Yeah. And then I remember going to seeing a YouTube channel where somebody had taken some Christadelphian videos and uploaded them, and it just sowed a seed. I thought, actually, that's, you know, it was just at the time when Ecclesias had started videoing talks, even though they were really basic, you know, done on acetates and then probably on VCR and things like that. But I saw a real potential in providing a service like that for brothers and sisters that couldn't get to meetings. And as a preaching resource, you know, why are we limiting? We know we don't get people coming to our halls anymore, and we haven't for a long time. Well, let's go to them. We've got the opportunity to take material to them. And so I think it's 2012, July 2012, I came up with the idea of starting this channel. There was another Christadelphian channel, but I didn't.
So what is this channel? What's the address? What is it?
Well, the channel we've started is on YouTube, and I think it's youtube.com/the Christadelphian Watchman. But we've got a website as well, which we're really focusing on, because we don't want to send people to YouTube, because, you know, you could watch a video from one of our videos and then YouTube quite quickly prompts you to watch something else that you might be interested in, playing golf or how to plant potatoes or something, you know, that just takes you off down a rabbit hole. So we set up BibleTruthAndProphecy.com, and we embed all the videos that we do there now. But the amazing thing for me is that I've been put in a situation now where I was financially stable, as I mentioned. I've got this work ethic, and I can plow it into something really, really positive. Where before I was just feeding my employers, you know, and, you know, they were benefiting from my input, where now I believe I'm actually helping, or at least contributing to helping the brotherhood, and as a preaching resource. And it's almost like a dream come true. I could never imagine being in this position with my work ethic at work. If I still had a job, 9 to 5 job, I don't think this would have happened. It's as though God has said, well, you're not going to stop yourself. So I prepared something earlier. This is your hit problem in case this was like this. You know, we can look at it like that, and we could think, well, it's a bit arrogant to think that, you know, God has that much involvement in your life. But I really do believe that He does. And if we're willing to be those vessels, He will sow, and He'll make it happen. It's just that we have to be willing. I've come across quite a few brethren doing what we do. I tend to be the face of Christadelphian video because I'm the one that ends up trying to source new material. But there is an army, literally an army of brothers and sisters involved with Christadelphian video in all sorts of capacities that do an absolutely fantastic job with no recognition. They just plow away on a daily basis. We've got graphic designers, we've got a review team, which is actually headed up in New Zealand, as you know, Robert. We've got all sorts, you know, and then of course we've got all the collaborations, all the ecclesias that we work with. We've had to contact all those. So in a sense, I've been the name that people see when it relates to Christadelphian video. I am on Facebook, and I've got a profile on Facebook, but you won't find anything about me on Facebook. My profile is called Christadelphian video, and that will bring up my profile. But I only ever post stuff about the videos that we produce, that the whole team produce.
Yeah.
I'm
So we're not going to see what you had for dinner last night.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not one of those people. I'm not arrogant enough to think that people are interested in what I had for breakfast or where I took my dog for a walk, all that kind of stuff. And I don't think any of us should be. Social media is there for me as a tool. All social media is, and we try to utilize it in that sense that we can spread God's word through a platform that has been given to us free of charge. Doesn't cost us anything except time.
Yeah.
I mean, our latest project at the moment is we're trying to develop a sharing network. So when we produce material, we can send it out to everybody who's got social media, and they share it on their timelines or on their Instagrams or TikToks or whatever they've got. It's what we all can do.
Yeah.
And I think there's something in the Christadelphian this month they published about it. But yeah, that's a passion at the moment, trying to get brothers and sisters involved in something so simple. You don't have to commit no massive amount of time.
And it's getting the word out there, which is great. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and we couldn't do that without collaboration. So, we rely on the collaboration of all the ecclesias we work with. We get permission from the speakers. We have had some ups and downs with that. We have some speakers that are okay for it to be behind a password or behind closed doors, but they don't want it going public. And it's been mentioned to me a couple of times that, they've got jobs that may be affected by some of the things that they say. Which is unfortunate. And I always call to mind what one brother who's actually on our committee, he said to me once. He said, first and foremost, I'm a Christadelphian. He says, then I'm a whatever his job was. And he says, and if somebody doesn't like what I say in my day job, then fine, let them sack me. God will provide. And I think that is such a refreshing attitude to have. And I think I can honestly say with everybody that's involved with Christadelphian video, all share that sentiment. They just want to get the word out there and provide, material for brothers and sisters to be edified from and encouraged by. And it's just wonderful. It is like a family. It's just like, we have a natural family, we have an ecclesial family, and I've been blessed with another family, if you like. And I know I've spoken to you about this, Robert, beforehand, but almost everybody on Christadelphian video I have never met. And yet we have this bond that, we're all together with the same aim to glorify God. We can forget personalities, we can forget, our foibles and all the things that we might not like about individuals and, the way we talk, the things we say, but we're all of one mind and we all have one aim. And it is such a joy. It absolutely is. And it just makes me think of the kingdom when we're all working together in one mind, focused on glorifying God. If this is a glimpse of the kingdom, I'd be happy with this, but we know it's going to far surpass that. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So you've also had a couple of recent. Well, I mean, if we go for our title, lemons that God has given you lately. You had a heart attack in February, and you lost a family member in 5 weeks ago.
And I lost my dad as well in December.
And your dad,
my dad. I met my dad when I was about 35. Obviously, because he left home when I was 3. Complete agnostic. No interest in the truth at all. I tried many times to talk to him. He knew what I did, what I was involved with, and every now and then he would watch a video that I sent him because I constantly bombarded him with links. but he had no interest. His life was, his idea about life was, you're born, life is hard, and you die, and that's it. And I just couldn't get through to him, and that's a big regret. No, it's not a regret, because obviously it was his choice. It's a disappointment. I'm really sad, because you like to feel if you've got passion for something, that you can convey that to other people, and at least they might listen and consider what you're saying. But he just wouldn't. He wouldn't consider it at all. And he made his choice, and I've got to accept that. And there are people like that around the world, that they're perfectly happy how they are. They don't want anything to disrupt that. Interestingly, until something goes wrong, and then suddenly, you find they're turning to God, which I always find really, really fascinating and strange.
Don't find an atheist in a lifeboat, eh?
No, exactly, yeah. But yeah, he died in December, and then I had a heart attack in February. Had no idea I was having a heart attack. I did suffer with acid reflux. I was overweight, but I thought I was having acid reflux, but it went on for a week. So I was actually having a heart attack for a whole week before I actually got taken to hospital. And it was last thing on a Friday. I thought, well, if I don't speak to the doctor now, I'm not going to speak to him all weekend. So I rang them at, I think, at 4 o'clock on the Friday. I said, look, it's just not going. I'm taking Gaviston and all this kind of stuff. It's not taking it off. She just said, call the ambulance. This dear lady came. It wasn't an ambulance. It was a first responder. She came. She did an ECG, said, don't like what I'm seeing. I'm going to take you into hospital. No mention of a heart attack still. I had no, even the doctor didn't say heart attack. Got to the hospital. She called an ambulance. She came with me to the hospital, which she didn't have to do that, but, she made that decision. Within half an hour of being there, I was taken upstairs. They'd called in a team that were off at the time, and I'd had 2 stents fitted. And it was only when I was in recovery, the consultant came around and said, so, Mr. Courtnell, you've had a heart attack and 2 stents fitted. And it was like, what? It was just a complete shock.
Just about gave you another one.
Yeah, but it was such a wake-up call. Even now I still struggle. Why did that happen? I'm trying to do the best I can. And my first thought was, if anything happened to me, what would happen to Christadelphian video? And that can sound really arrogant, but I was really, really concerned. I thought, I've made no preparation. If I disappear all of a sudden, I haven't got a problem with disappearing. If that's what God wants to do, that's fine. But it did make me realise that I need to spread it out even more. I need to get people involved so it can just continue. It may have in some form, but at the moment, I'm the only one that's editing videos. So that would have dried up completely. So without that, the rest of it can't function. So I'm desperately at the moment trying to find like-minded brothers or sisters that are in a similar position to me that can spend some time doing this. Now, I appreciate that I'm not going to find one person that's got all day to spend making videos. But there may well be, 6 or 7 brethren dotted around the world that have got time to produce 1 or 2 videos that could liaise together. Yeah. So it may well be that, it was for that reason. It may well be that God was saying, you're spending too long doing it. Because I was in this cabin where I am now. I'd be spending 12, 14 hours sitting in this chair doing no exercise, eating pork pies and crisps, and all those kind of things that we shouldn't be doing. And it may well be that God will say, no, that's too much. You're not focusing on your family. You've got this family, great, and this it's good what we're doing, but you've got other things. You've got your ecclesial family, you've got your own family. So for me, it was just a bit of a wake-up call. And we were chatting the other day, Robert, and some of the things you were saying just really hit home with me. How important family is. We've all got jobs to do, and I think a lot of Christadelphians, like me, were too focused on their work, their day jobs, to the detriment of everything else. So, yeah, I've still yet to fully understand what happened, but I've since changed my lifestyle. I'm now actively trying to recruit brothers and sisters that can edit videos. I've lost over 2 stone. Well, just under 2 stone, sorry. I feel great. I've got a new enthusiasm for family and for this as well, and a new appreciation for life, because, you know, I could have been taken away, and like I say, I haven't got a problem with that at all. And I think there's still work to be done, a massive amount of work to be done, and that's why this project, that sharing project, has really gained focus as well. Because if we can get more important people involved, I think that's only got to be a good thing.
Yeah.
If you think back, just like, you know, heading towards a sort of summing up here. If you think back over your life, right from the start, is there anything that you would have changed? You know, especially over the rough times, is there anything you would have changed from where you are now?
No. I'm a firm believer in what happens for a reason, and I think we have to believe like that. If we believe, as we do, that God is in control, that He orchestrates our lives, He doesn't make us do things, but He puts us in situations where we can learn. And if I changed anything, that might, I don't know, you know, I'd be going, in a sense, I'd be going against God's will.
Yeah.
Because that's what God wanted for me.
Yes.
And it sounds awfully arrogant to think that, you know, we quoted that Jeremiah passage, and, you know, you can say, oh yeah, that applies to me. But I really do believe it applies to every single Christadelphian. You know, whatever role we have to play in the truth, what you do with this family matters and your thinky things and all that, and the support that you get from your family and your ecclesia and everybody else that's involved, and everybody on every level that has something to do in the ecclesia, is done for a reason. We all have a role to play. Yeah, some will be, you know, international speakers, and some will be a doorman.
Yeah,
it's irrelevant. We are just called to serve, and if we're granted to do something that we really, really like, that's just an ultimate blessing. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I pinch myself sometimes to think that, you know, I can do this all day long. I can spread the word. I always wanted to when I first came into the truth, but my work ethic in a work environment prevented me.
Yeah.
I was too obsessed with trying to prove myself, and, you know, I think that probably stemmed from childhood. I wanted to prove myself to my employer, and, you know, that I could be the best thing they'd ever seen, kind of thing. And I with Christadelphian video, I think what's had to happen is it certainly made me realise it's not about us. Whatever we do, it isn't about us, and we can easily fall into that trap. You know, I'm not keen. This is one of my little pet things. I see with Christadelphians, we publish a lot of books, don't we? And I've noticed on more and more publications recently, the writer's name is getting bigger and bigger, and in fancy fonts, and, you know, it's getting almost to be part of the title. And I don't think that's where we should be going. You know, the speaker's name should be on the back in small print, because it's not about us. We're here to serve and
to promote, to show people to God, point people to God.
Yeah. Well, we need to wrap up now, but just would like to ask if you've got any closing comments, some little words of encouragement for any one of us that might be going through tough times, and just need a little bit of encouragement to be able to keep on seeing God working in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, the big focus for me always starts with prayer. I think, if we have any issues at all, we have to go to God in prayer. We should be doing that anyway on a daily basis. And I think if we're genuine and we're humble and we truly want God's will, then all our problems will be solved. I am a firm believer in that. We might not see it straight away, but God has a plan for us. And knowing that should provide us with a massive amount of comfort, take any stress away, because, if the creator of heaven and earth and sea has a plan for us, what can possibly go wrong? Only we can go, only we can prevent and obstruct. We put that obstacle there. We've just got to open ourselves up, I think, and be ready to accept whatever God has got for us. And I know many brothers and sisters suffer awfully throughout their lives. And they show great strength and humility in how they deal with that. But God, all we know is that God will not test us more than we can be tested. And yeah, it's a real difficult subject, isn't it? But it is. Yeah, it is what it is. We believe God because we know He loves us, and a God who loves us isn't going to make us suffer unnecessarily more than we can bear. Yeah, just constant in prayer.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us. It really is one of encouragement, and to be able to see how God has taken those things that could seem like very negative experiences and has turned it into something positive and has given you a new direction and a new place where you can serve in a full-time capacity, despite the disability that you've been under and suffered with. So thank you for sharing that with us, Art.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
It's been a really encouraging story, for all of us, no matter what sort of stage, whatever area we are in life. So it's been great.
Yeah, I hope it's helped.
Yeah. Next time on Family Matters, we have the dynamics of communication with Gary Steele, and that's on the 30th of August, God willing. And then on the 13th of September, we're going to be talking about love languages with Jeff Watson. So those are a couple of things that's coming up in the next few weeks. If you want to receive emails about what's happening on Family Matters, or a bit of a review of what we did last week, this week, or all the information, we send out an email. If you just email me, robert@thinkythings.com, and I will put you on that email list, and you'll be able to find out what's coming up and what's been. If you want to see past recordings like this one, go to Pickering and Christadelphians. Just Google Pickering and Christadelphians and you'll find it all there. And if you hang around, we'll have a bit of a chat and hopefully be able to, if you've got any questions, you can ask Art those when we have a chat. But we won't record that. So if you want to watch it and you're listening to the recording, you got to watch live for the chat. So what we'll do is, Art, actually one last question. What's the link to your website? Can you just tell us the name?
Yeah, good point. That wasn't very good social media sharing, was it? There's a couple of ways to get to it. One is cd@charliedeltavideo.org. That's probably the easiest one for Christadelphians. Or there is christadelphianvideo.org or bibletruthandprophecy.com. All will take you to the same place. I'm not going to give you the YouTube one because I don't really want to encourage people to go to YouTube. It's just a platform we use.
Fair enough. Okay, and we'll send that out on the next email as well. We'll send all those links out.